So I know, please ask questions because it helps other people too. I can't tell you how often the question you have is what 3 other people have. But what do I want this thing to look like? The first thing you should look, okay, if you've done this draft, right, and you're looking at, right now you probably are looking at someone else's draft, you need to see their title because I'm asking you to come up with a pretty good title. If there's not a title up there, then just make a note saying two-tier title, all right? But this is a popular review of literature, and it's pretty important. I didn't really want this to happen this way for like the critique papers because you can tell your audience that it's a critique paper. Remember the Farewell My Mailbox and The Fly and all that, without calling it like a level 2 critique up here. But here, all right, it is accepted convention. We can just go ahead and put something like a review of the literature for, okay, now what are we writing about? Health and wellness? Well, what were the sources about? Obviously breakfast, right? Okay, so what are we going to call this? Breakfast habits? Okay, all right. But in across the world, America, right? So let's introduce some sort of general limitation here, just to get a decent title here. A review of literature for American breakfast habits. Now wait a minute though, was that really what it was saying? When I see this in somebody's writing, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, what did I ask for in the instructions? Right? I asked for a two-tier title. The reason I'm asking us to focus on that is that obviously there are plenty of single-tiered titles. Would you quit popping up? But and you can use them. But if I'm going to teach you how to write either single-tier or two-tier, I'll focus on two-tier because if you know how to write a two-tier title, you can probably write a pretty good single-tier title. Okay, so this might work, but I think it would be better if we did something like this. Okay, critical and popular work on American on American breakfast. That seems a little awkward there, so I'm going to go ahead and put the American breakfast. I'm going to get this out of here. And then I'm going to put over here a review of the literature. Okay. Now, when you have a title that goes from one edge of the page all the way to the other, it looks kind of awkward, doesn't it? If it's a two-tier title, just put a line right here. Okay, it wants me to pay attention to it, so there we go. So, you know what? Actually, how creative can you get with something like this? Well, I wouldn't mind at all if you use that title. All right, if you want to add to it, add some nuances, fine. But you can go ahead and use that title as you actually write it out. Now, how are we going to start this? How did you start it? How did the paper you are looking at started it? Okay, so I want to see a show of hands. How many of you have an intro paragraph? Okay, an intro paragraph that goes like 5 or 6 or 7 lines. Let's say 5 lines or more. 5 lines or more of text, an intro paragraph. Okay, as a rule of thumb, a review of literature can open up really, really quick. All right. So, what if now I'm going to do something here just to I'm going to do something here just to help us on the screen, right? I'm going to go ahead and bold this. I'll make it a little bit bigger. And down here, I'm back to, let's go ahead and go back to font 14. Let's put it over here. You know what? If your teacher asks you to write in MLA format or APA format, everything I just did right there, you need to undo. Because you need to check how MLA would have you format a title. And they're not asking for an increased font or for it to be underlined or for it to be bold. It's just, the place for the title is at the top centered, and that's how we tell it's a title. But it's double spaced like everything else, and it should look the same as everything else as far as font size and that sort of thing. So is that like deep advice, or is that just like stuff about superficial matters? Absolutely it's the latter, superficial matters. Why is it important? If you don't do it, it's a distraction. It pulls attention to itself. It's an unnecessary obstacle to what you're trying to write. All right? You want to remove all of those unnecessary obstacles from your paper. It's a very simple thing just to get the title as it should be, which is regular size font, not bolded, all that sort of thing. Well, how should we start this thing? Okay. How about something like breakfast is an incredibly important meal for the human body, and because of its importance, or let's just go, and thus there is quite a bit of work done on breakfast, both through professional analysis, help if I could spell, and popular examination. Okay, now I personally think that's a little wordy. I think I'm kind of throwing some phrases around that I could have better style here. But I am trying to hit on something. It's going to be about breakfast. There's a lot of work on it, okay? And that the work that I'm going to look at here is professional work, like scholarly work, a dietitian looking at it, a scientist looking at it, through very, close analysis in terms of experiment and nutritional breakdown, all that sort of thing. But there's also a lot of work done just in terms of popular writing. Small articles, small books, easy to read books, cookbooks, there's a lot of material on it, right? All right, so in this review of literature, I will cover the spectrum of work in terms of category, or referring specifically to a few, to a source, when I do only to give an example of the category. All right. So what I'm doing there is, even though it's in the title, right, I am repeating the topic and the purpose of the essay. And that's sort of convention, and I saw this in some of the earlier essays I've looked at. The title needs to tell the reader what you're going to do with the essay, and by convention, the very beginning of the essay should also repeat that. We don't consider that redundant. We consider it a pretty decent opening, okay? Now notice that I'm taking a pretty workmanship, journeyman approach to this. I've got a job to do, I'm going to get it done. I'm not necessarily trying to provide a very interesting or humorous opening, or I'm not trying to catch people into seeing it, because I don't have an interesting insight to make. I don't have a thesis to argue. This is not the purpose of a review of literature. What I have are summaries to offer. Okay. Now, since there are so many works out there, right, on breakfast, should I like summarize the works themselves? That's overwhelming. I mean, then I would have to do what, like 40, 50 of them? And that's not even the iceberg of all the works that are done on breakfast. It's much better to summarize categories, all right? So that's why I made it the point here that I'm going to be doing categories. And that if I do mention a specific book, it's just so that it's an example of a category. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. What's the first one? Let's go. Much academic work on breakfast is in the form of scholastic journal articles. These articles, now I would describe them. I'm going to put this in square brackets, actually in angle brackets. All right. I asked you to learn a little bit about punctuation, and angle brackets didn't really make it in there. Square brackets did, and so did parentheses. They have particular ways to be used in writing. But I like to have my own little way to tell me as the reader, I need to come back to this, and I need to add. So I'll use angle brackets. And okay, the thing I want to do here for each of this is describe the category and then mention the specific word. Okay, so a journal article. What do you think, given the abstract, which I hope you read, and I did attach the PDF to the source folder so that maybe you could have looked at the PDF. What do you think the journal article really employed a lot of? Well, what technical jargon? Were there a lot of numbers running around there? Did it look like a pretty heavy-duty experiment? All right, so it's going to be experiential, experiment-based. Did it try to talk to you about how breakfast helps your finances? How breakfast helps you, in family matters, keep your family together? How it helps you heal your psychological problems? Well, we didn't look at all of the articles, right? I mean, I just gave you one, but trust me, that was representative. It's going to be an empirical study. In other words, it's going to be a scientific experiment. They're going to give you a lot of number crunching. They're going to explain to you how they ran the experiment, and they're going to tie it up with a health benefit, right? So what, I'm going to put explain the category. Experiment. Data, numbers, health, benefit. Okay. Now, a specific, or I could do something after I explain that, and that might go on for a couple of sentences. Okay. But at first, I need to explain the category, and then I'll say, for example, how many of you know the date of that journal article? Excellent. All right, in 2011, do you remember the season? October. All right, in fall 2011, the American Heart Association, in their journal circulation. Now, journal titles need to be italicized, so printed an article titled, I wouldn't put entitled. Entitled means that you have the right to something. You're entitled to. If you're talking about somebody giving a title to something, it's just titled, okay? See that often misused. But anyway, what was the title? Put the title here. In quotation marks, capitalized correctly. Written by, now what are we going to do? We have 5 authors. Were all the names listed? Yeah, you can find them. Check the abstract I had. You can either list out the names, written by lead author, or you can do something like author J.K. Choi. I don't know who it was, but let's just, and 4 others. That's fine. From did they tell you the university it's affiliated with? Yeah, from Harvard, wasn't it? From Harvard. Now, it's probably like Harvard School of Health or something. I don't know, but what am I doing here? I'm being as specific as I can with the actual example. I'm going to give you the journal name, the article name, the author's name, and maybe a little bit about where they came from and all that sort of thing. All right? After that, I'm going to put main thesis. Hold on, I off my home row. Main thesis, major points, way they did the experiment. Now, and then I'm done. Because remember, I'm not here necessarily to evaluate that. I'm trying to, as a review of literature, I'm trying to give my audience summaries of the literature that's out there. So the next one was what? A report. Similar to academic journals are, now what type of report was this? Reports by a private foundation, okay, by a research company, are smaller reports produced by, independent research companies or groups. Describe category. All right, give an example. And in giving the example, I've got to be as specific as I was up front. And I've got to talk about the thesis of the example, the title of the example, the points of the example, that sort of thing. All right? So what should I do after this? Well, the next one was a popular article, wasn't it? Am I correct in that? Okay. Both academic journals and professional reports. Oh man, I can't believe this internet thing is constantly. Reports. A major way authors reach a wider, excuse me. Both academic journals and professional reports are addressed to a specific audience. A major way authors reach a wider, less technical audience is the popular article published on the web. Do you see what I'm doing? Okay, describe the category. A lot of pictures, a lot of flip through these screens, a lot of here's a spokesperson, here's a celebrity that says this is a great breakfast, here's a recipe. All right, great, here's a ton of ads. Okay? And then give a specific example. The one that I had about, you know which one I'm talking about. Just boom, 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 boom. Now the harder one is to do the books, and I'll talk about this on Tuesday, okay? But we have some minutes left. And this is basically what I'm expecting. I'm expecting you to work in terms of a really quick intro that discusses, hey, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm doing it on. I'm going to focus on categories rather than lists of sources. Category 1. Journal. I'm going to identify the category. I'm going to explain it. I'm going to give an example of it. Next one. I'm going to move on to a different category, reports. I'm going to explain it. I'm going to give examples of it. Now, notice the transitions. Notice that I'm taking care to let the reader know I'm moving to a new topic. Similar to academic journals. That's what I focused on here. I'm going to move on to reports. There's a flow that's happening there, okay? Both academic journals and professional reports. I'm referring to stuff that's gone before to move the reader on to something new that I'm going to focus on. So I also want you to check the transitions of your paragraphs. So for those of you that actually have material in front of you right now, could you check the title? Could you check to see that the introduction is workmanship-like? It's getting right down to business. And now check to see how the paragraphs open that are trying to summarize the reports. Do you get a focus on a category? And then do you get a specific source introduced as an example? One thing you can do right away is just look at how the sources are introduced. Are they given by titles and authors and who did it? So as far as like the report goes, it's just like, well, there was a report about breakfast landscapes? Or is it like a report titled Mealtime Landscapes, I forget, 2011, whatever, by NPD, the research group NPD on 2011? Is it specific like that? So if they don't have that sort of specificity, you need to really tell them to put it in. Let me turn this off here.